This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Hey y'all, this is Jhavia Nicole, aka your girl's favorite lesbian, and you're listening to Black Radical Queer Podcast, our stories on our own terms. Today I have a couple of guests with me, so I will give them time to introduce themselves before we get into today's topic. Let's start with Alexa. You can go ahead and tell the listeners some info about you, and I'll also make sure that I let you all know their social media handles and stuff like that if you want to connect.
Yeah, sure. Hey everybody, my name is Alexa. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really just out here trying to make it, trying to live. I'm healing myself in a world that is not allowing me to heal, but also just having a blast and following my heart at the same time. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And we have Shira. So, Shira, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself as well.
Hello, I'm Shira. Nothing interesting about me, really. I use she and her pronouns. I'm married. I have an open marriage. I have a few alternative interests and pastimes, but that's pretty much all there is to me.
Both Alexa and Shira are also Black queer women like myself, Black radical queer women like myself. So I thought it would be appropriate to have them join me in this conversation. And I think Alexa, I have known for, I feel like 3 years, maybe.
3 years.
3 years. Yeah. Because we met before I relocated from Atlanta at Southern Fried Queer Pride.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that was 2015. I actually did a workshop, led a workshop there. And we were in a workshop together that was after mine, and just kind of clicked and had a lot of good conversation and hung out before I relocated. And it was really dope. So just tries to stay connected to her even since I've relocated. And Shira and I have known each other. I actually don't know how many years. I think actually around the same amount of time. Yeah, I actually think around the same amount of time. And we just connected. We have a lot of mutual connections. And I actually noticed her in a photo, and I would ask a mutual connection of ours. I'm like, my mentor, I was like, who is that? She feels like someone I know or that I should know. So it just was from us being kind of connected to common people on Facebook. And I just asked some of our mutual folks, who's that? Okay, tell her she's my people, because apparently she's connected to all my people. So I'm claiming her. And that's how that really took off. So I'm glad to be connected to each of them. What I wanted to talk about today actually is microaggressions. And I want to talk about microaggressions because sometimes I read articles on Psychology Today because I'm a nerd and because of my background. And one of the articles that was the article of the day toward the end of last month was about microaggressions, and it was about critiquing the research around microaggressions. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting what they said in the article. So, so I thought it was interesting what they said. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of share a quick definition, because I'm not going to assume that everyone knows what that means. So I'm going to share a quick definition and share a snippet of the article, because this is what really kind of got my mind going, because I was just really? So once I do that, then I really want for us to be able to have a conversation about our experiences with microaggressions, but I just thought it was interesting what they said. So let me pull this up. All right. So in terms of a definition, microaggressions are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons based solely upon their marginalized group membership. Okay, so that, sounds like it makes sense, but this article, so let me just give you a little bit of background on the article. So this is Psychology Today. So that way too, you'll be able to find it for yourself and, see that I'm definitely not making this up. this article is from May 25th, and it's called Microaggressions, A Critique of the Research. It's actually a professor at Emory University who is, I guess, known for being a quote unquote myth debunker or like pseudoscience debunker. Right. So I know. So it begins, right? So he has a paper. He has a paper called is where he's critiquing what's called the microaggression research program. And so the microaggression research program found a link between exposure to microaggressions and poor mental health outcomes. And so he critiques that. So here's kind of like his main point that that just really had me feeling away. So I was like, okay, whatever. So he says, subtle insults occur, and some of them are surely motivated by racial prejudice, but choosing to call these slights microaggressions was a mistake. Why? Because definitions of aggression almost always include the notion of intentionality. The person who inadvertently steps on your foot is not being aggressive, but the person who intentionally stomps on your foot is. Okay, so it says microaggression researchers claim that microaggressions are subtle snubs and slights directed toward minorities that are expressed unconsciously. But unconscious acts, by definition, are not intentional. If we accept the standard definition of aggression, a slight expressed unconsciously can be hurtful, but not aggressive per se. So he says that basically the term microaggression should be replaced with something more appropriate, like inadvertent racial slight. And I'll just stop there because I'm not going to read this whole thing. But
wow.
But I was like, this is really interesting. So I wanted to get you all to take on that. First of all, I wanted to know what you thought about this. So this is Scott Lilienfeld. So I want to know what y'all think about Professor Scott Lilienfeld down there at Emory University in Atlanta. And if you agree or disagree, and if you feel like the term, like kind of like what you think about the term microaggression in terms of its use, like is it an appropriate term for what you've experienced as a Black queer person, or if you feel like it should be changed, like if the term itself is not does not accurately describe. So what do y'all?
Wow. It must, being privileged is nice to have that blind spot and be able to speak to that. Like that's a beautiful place to live, I'm assuming. I disagree with that because I understand what is trying to be said, that it's not intentional. However, racism, it is intentional. But, the argument here is that it's not intentional. The argument is it's not intentional, but it obviously isn't. It clearly is intentional. The issue I have with that is racism, any ism is systematic. So there are byproducts to that, and that influences people's behavior. And it doesn't change the amount of emotional labor I still have to do. This may be your first time saying that to me, but you won't be the first person. Like, that's my life experience. And I still have to emotionally process that. I'm still put in a position where I have to now teach you what you're saying is incorrect and as to why. So it is aggressive. It is aggressive. And there's many forms of aggression. So yes, you may not just call me you may just not call me the N-word to my face, but you wanting to touch my hair is the same issue. It's the same problem, whether it's intentional or not.
But the funny thing is, I think part of it is this whole thing about aggression and then like violence, right? So, and then too, like how do you know when they use the example of like someone stepping on your foot? Okay, it's not the best example, first of all. And then second of all, someone stepping on your foot, even if it's quote unquote inadvertent, it could still be violent. So in microaggressions, like do you have like this undercurrent of like this subtle violence? But I don't think that's really an adequate comparison, because someone stepping on my foot accidentally is not the same as someone being like, "Oh, can I touch your hair? Oh, how do you get?" Like those kind of things are. "Oh, you're so well spoken." Those types of things. That's not the same. So to use that comparison is just not. It is not accurate. And two, you can also be passive aggressive. Passive aggression is a thing, and lots of microaggressions are passive aggressive, and they're still fueled by racism and bias and prejudice and bigotry and all this kind of stuff, which is oppressive, which is violent. So whether you're passive aggressive or aggressive, assertive aggressive, it's still an issue, So I don't feel like, oh, well, we can't use this term because if it's inadvertent or it's subconscious. But no, there's a reason why that's like your unconscious kind of like way of being, because it's been ingrained in you. So the reason why you're, inadvertently, quote unquote, racist, which is ridiculous, but you're inadvertently because it's been ingrained.
What the hell is inadvertent racism exactly?
I know but that's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. It's like, oh, well, if it's inadvertent, then it's not aggressive. But it's like, there's no such thing because it's systemic oppression. So it's not inadvertent ever.
And even if you wanted to actually make some kind of critique, right? Because that's what scientists do, apparently. And I say that as a scientist, like, I almost dropped the F-bomb, I'm so sorry. But I say that as a scientist myself, you
can curse. We're fine. We're grown.
Wow. Oh, that is good to know. But, as a scientist myself, I'm always asking hard questions and trying to answer questions. And that's what this institution was trying to do, trying to ask and answer the question of microaggressions. And in his own critique, he completely ran away from intersectionality. He reduced it completely to, oh, if someone stomps on your foot. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about microaggressions. If you would like to talk about microaggressions, we could do that. But no one's stomping on people's feet and calling them racist.
It's just not a fair comparison. It's not an accurate parallel at all.
And it's funny because the institution it seems that it's a way to hold things and people and institutions accountable. And he is avoiding that by completely ignoring the intersectionality of the institution itself. This institution is looking at a whole bunch of different things that are all squishing and smashing people because it's systemic, as you mentioned. And he's just like, no, I don't stomp on people's feet. I'm not racist. I don't know what any of you are talking about. And it's just
but it's funny. It's funny he's talking about, oh, well, the term microaggression should be replaced with something like inadvertent racial bias. But to me, I feel like there's no such thing as inadvertent racial bias. So he's saying that microaggression is like,
call it something. Call it racism. Just say it's racist. Don't.
But inadvertent racial bias, that's an oxymoron because
that doesn't exist.
Inadvertently racist. How are you inadvertently racist? How, Sway? I have questions.
It's not possible. It's not possible. That's why, like I say, it's from a place of privilege. Like that is such a privilege to where you don't have, because you don't deal with that. You're like, oh, well, it can't be as serious as you're talking about. It's just something that you can tuck away. It's a temporary reaction to something. Like if someone steps on your toe, it's ow, that hurts.
And that's when
someone touches your hair. Yeah, when someone touches your hair, that is not a, oh my gosh, you touched my hair situation. That is attached to feelings and emotions and experiences that are part of being Black or any person of color. Exactly.
That's a violation of someone's autonomy. That is a consent violation. Did I say you could touch my damn hair? Absolutely not. But that's
a better comparison would be
it's ridiculous.
Like stomping on someone's foot for 1,200 years and being like, why are you over this yet? Why are you?
They would not have a foot
walking? What's going on? And you're just standing there like, you've been stomping on my foot consistently in so many different ways and so many different kinds of shoes that I can't even begin to figure out how to start picking up the pieces. And that's what this institution seemed to be trying to do. So really, this person is just another. It's just it's another
to avoid
guys. Y'all, this is someone who debunks things. So when I first started reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is like one of the most respected quote unquote debunkers in the industry, and I was just like, here we go with the bullshit already. I was like, the title was like microaggressions, a critique, and then it was like, oh, one of the top debunkers. I'm like, let me just see what shape and form the bullshit's gonna take, because I know it's coming. I know. And then as soon as I started reading, I'm like, I did the meme where the guy's like making that face like, oh, that, like, it's like the dark skinned guy. That's the face I made. But he's like rubbing his face and he's like, oh, and he's nodding and he's like, oh, that was my reaction. Like, are you kidding? So my thing is, I thought it was interesting to read this because I'm like, okay, I know for a fact that me and other people like me, look, Charmaine's like, from the wire. My producer just typed in the chat, like, from the wire. Yes, that guy. That's one of my favorite memes. But I just thought it was interesting because I'm like, I know that we deal with a lot of different microaggressions, but I wanted to talk about it because we experience them as Black people, as Black women, and as queer people, and as queer women. So it's like, even the microaggressions that we experience are intersectional. Like, we don't just get one layer, we get like all of them. Really, the only people who have it like has even one more layer would be trans women, Black trans women. They got like the most layers, but we are experiencing it from all these different angles. So that's why, despite this foolishness about debunking this whole term, I wanted us to be able to talk about what our experiences are with microaggressions as a Black person, as a Black woman, as a queer person, because there's overlap. And then there's some things that are specific to like one of the identities. So I don't know, what have been some, some we kind of know a lot about culturally, like the whole thing about the hair. That is just like a classic one that has just rang true for generations and generations. But what are like some other things that you've experienced that okay, this is like some real insidious, like, type of stuff going on?
Oh, so I'm a first generation American. And there have been people who will look at my last name and assume that somehow that makes me better. Like, there's something culturally that doesn't get talked about where they put people who are not Black Americans on a pedestal. And that bothers me. And it's never like, no one ever says that. They'll just be like, so you must be educated, or you must be this and that. And it's like, why?
Are they like, where are you from? Where are you from?
Yeah, and I'm
you're
like,
better Black. You're like you're that upper level Black.
Baton Rouge, though. Like, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Like, I am Black. Like, and like that's my culture too. And they're like, oh, well, you shouldn't. Why would you listen to that? Your ancestors. I'll never forget. I had a white lady say, oh, well, why are you listening to rap music? You wouldn't listen to something from Nigeria. And I'm like, heifer, like, you are listening, like, aren't you listening to some rock music? Like, you're not from, are you from the city this group is from? Like, what are you trying to? That's annoying. And then
She tried it.
With my wife, when people find out we're married, I'll notice people. Straight couples, they will address their spouse as their spouse, but they'll call me like her girl or how's your boo thing. But it's interesting because they will refer to their partners as a spouse, and we don't get that same luxury in conversation.
Oh, wow. How's your friend? How your little friend doing?
Exactly. And it's like, how's your friend? The one that you live with and pay bills with? Because that's what I do with my wife. And we're doing the same thing.
Sorry.
Those being a queer and then dealing with people who feel like I can't be African and a lesbian. They're like, oh, so culturally, like, you can do that. Like that's something that you can just like, I can be like, oh, well, because, I'm Nigerian, I'm just going to not be attracted to women. I'll just take that off now. And
choose one.
While wearing my Nigerian too. Yes. It's just like, and no one ever comes out, and you can tell when they're talking to you that they just genuinely have never had that thought process challenged. And then you have to make a decision, as with every other microaggression, in that space. Do you want to take the time out to educate them, or do you want to just keep it moving, or do you want to cuss them out?
Right. See, we're all expected to teach. So I'm at a place now in my life where I'm like, I'm tired of that shit. Like, I'm tired of having to be like, this is a teachable moment, and have the little reading rainbow screen. The more you know. The more you know, start with the rainbow. Like, I'm over that. Like, I used to be in that place where I would be like, talk to people and all that. And y'all, like, the older I get, the more radical I get and the more fed up I get. And the more I'm like, well, no, fuck that. You have access to resources. You probably have access to resources that I don't. Go educate yourself, or somebody else need to do it, because I'm not the one, unless you're going to pay me. I'm going to need to be compensated for this labor. I'm just
There you
I'm
go.
not.
There you go. That
I'm not.
emotional labor that people demand of me specifically as a Black queer woman is out of control. It's out of control. I'm owed back so much money. People really, really, truly, and with the microaggressions, it's really what people are demanding of you. Be nice. Be an interesting Negro. Do something. Dance.
Right.
Sing. Ooh, entertain me. I'm bored. I'm at work and I need you to tell me about your life. Who's pitiful in your life? Those are the microaggressions I really, really deal with, because I work with white women who are exhausting for many reasons. That's a whole nother podcast I'm sure that you all will do. But one of the biggest microaggressions I deal with is having to talk about nothing, having to participate in nothing talk. And it's really actually more exhausting than it sounds, because you're talking about things and people you don't know or care about. You're not invested in it. And you have to be very excited because you're the sage. You're the Black lady at the office who has all the knowledge and the wisdom to help me solve this problem, whatever the hell is wrong with you, that I don't care about. But I never noticed it until after college, after living with white women and working with white women, and how they operate and how they exchange knowledge and information amongst themselves and how they exclude and make me other. Oh God, I learned microaggressions I had never knew before, because like you mentioned, the one about the hair, Solange wrote that song for a reason, you know what I'm saying? She knows the tea. But there were microaggressions I had never, ever experienced that were really affecting my life and fucking with me in the worst way. I couldn't get past it until I figured out, what the hell is this that's bothering me? Why do I not like this person? Maybe I'm being a jerk. Maybe something's, now you're doubting. That's the whole point, of the microaggression, is to just minimize you to nothing.
Right. I mean, it's to make you feel like you're the problem, like you're but that's the thing. That's the whole thing about like systemic oppression and just even things like sexism, racism, all the isms, is that it's the same as like an abusive relationship, or like having a manipulative, controlling partner where it's toxic. That's what it is. So it's like the whole thing is gaslighting. It's like, oh, let me make it seem like you're the problem, like you're the one with the issue. And part of it is because, too, Black women are always expected to be the ones who like fix things and who we like take everything in stride. We're supposed to be accommodating. And it reminds me of like, right. It reminds me of like my wife and I were watching Scandal, and Cicely Tyson's character was like talking to Olivia Pope. And she was like, yeah, she was telling her like, you always fixing things. Because, of course, Olivia was like handling everything and everybody. And she's like, we get so busy doing that, that we don't have time for ourselves. But the expectation is for us to do that. So she was telling Olivia, like, I see you doing that. I see you on TV. I see you, fixing everything for everybody. And she was like, I used to do that too. Not on this level, like not on this, in this like arena in terms of like in the White House, but I used to do that too. And she was like, that's what we're expected to do. We're expected to clean. And I mean, and that's what that narrative is that as Black women, we are expected to be the ones who clean up the messes, who fix things, and also who take the brunt of like all the aggression, all the violence, all the oppression.
The mules.
Take it in stride and stay graceful and stay poised and like be the strong Black woman. That's why I absolutely hate that trope of the strong Black woman, because that means we're supposed to just be the punching bag. We're supposed to be the maid. We're supposed to be the whore, we're supposed to be the virgin, we're supposed to do like all these things, and it doesn't make sense. But we're supposed to just take it and keep pushing, because it's weak. It's weak if it impacts us. But it's like, that's all we have. The mental health outcomes we have. That's all we have. It's just, it creates like this domino effect. But that's what the expectation of us is when no matter what space we navigate. So school, work. I remember I was at work and this white girl, so there was like some people having a conversation, and some stuff I just try to keep myself out of because I know the place I'm in now. I know that I'm more radical, and I know that I cuss your ass out. Like I know that I'm not like I can't say I'm all about like nonviolent resistance. I'm past that point too, honestly. I'll get with you if I have to.
See,
So
I feel you.
Right.
I know that about myself, so I police myself accordingly. So they're having a conversation at work, and at that particular job I was working, we dealt with a lot of political campaigns. Like we worked, I did fundraising, so we were like working on a lot of different like social issues and political issues. And so they're talking about stuff, and they were talking about like police brutality and all this other kind of stuff. And they're having a conversation. I was just like, let me just exit because I don't need to get in on this at all. And so this white girl basically tried to come at me like, because she said something to me about like, oh, it being a teachable moment, or like kind of asking me why I didn't chime in, because she's like, because she knew me or whatever, because me and her had worked together before. And so she was like, why don't, you kind of like chime in and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, well, no. First of all, I was like, it's not my responsibility to be the teacher. I'm not obligated to do that. And I'm like, really, what would be a better thing is you talk to your people, because I am not the one or the two. Like, I'm just not. I'm just not in that place anymore. So you can get the knowledge that you need and all that kind of stuff. If you're more aware, then you talk to them, because it's only so much talking I can do before I'm ready to throw some hands. Like, I'm just not, my mindset, like the headspace I'm just not there. And I know that about myself. I'm just not. I'm like, we're not going to go back and forth about my humanity too much before I want to put hands on you.
Right.
Like,
Right.
It's like,
right.
I don't do that anymore.
So true.
It's not but also it's not our responsibility. We shouldn't have to do that. And I'm not going to beg you for my humanity. I refuse. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. That's, and I noticed that most of my microaggressions happen when I'm in a space that white people are in, and they're trying to get comfortable. So for instance, like at the dog park, we have animals. So when we go to the dog park, all the white ladies, they always want to come over and they try to start conversation. And it's like, I know you're only doing this to make yourself comfortable. Because right now, looking at me here with my animals is making you uncomfortable. So you're trying to like create some sort of dialogue so you feel comfortable. My wife's like, I'm just not gonna do that. Like, I don't care if she's comfortable or not. Like, we're just here. Our dogs are here.
Or trying to make yourself seem like, hey, I'm one of the, it's like people who say, oh, I voted for Obama. It's like they want to make it seem like, oh, I'm one of the good ones, type of thing. Like, I'm not racist. Let me go talk to this black person. I have a black friend.
You can totally trust me with all of your secrets.
Right. And it's like, it's not my job to validate you. I don't have to
get away from me. Nobody was even talking to you. Why are you here? Why are you
here?
Oh
my gosh. No, you know what I hate? I hate when people okay, so something that's a microaggression to me, that can be, sometimes it's an assertive aggression, but which I don't think people realize, is that when people say, let's say if, you're talking about an experience that you had, and then someone is like, say someone who's not in that group. So if you're, as a black person, talking about an experience with racism, and a white person is like, well, I'm oppressed when I go into these spaces. Like, they basically try to say reverse racism, or when they say, oh, it's Pride, like it's Pride Month or whatever. And if you're like, oh, it's Pride, we're going to celebrate Pride, and straight people are like, there's not a straight Pride, that kind of thing. There is that was my my cishet male voice, okay? But when they try to say,
it was good. That was a good rendition.
But that was a microaggressions too, because it's like I'm so threatened by your visibility that I'm like, let me assert mine, even though I am the status quo, even though I am highly visible. So as a cis het person, or as a non-black person, you're already very visible, more visible than me. And so me asserting myself and my identity and being like, hey, I'm black, I'm queer, or whatever, and you feel the need to be like, what about me? That's still a microaggression, because you feel like you have to erase me to like, to make yourself more visible when you're already hyper visible.
And that to me is the most telling thing about racism and just like white people in general. The fact that in your head, you assert power with having to take someone else's power shows that this is systemic. and it's inherent to you. Like, I really believe that white people, and even like, or whatever privilege you have to unlearn that privilege, because the fact that a white person feels like it not being a space not centered around them is taking away power. That, like, there's a lot to unpack there. Like, it's like, you, like, why are you worried about me over here? You need to do some soul searching, because we can both have power. We can both coexist and it not be a threat. So the fact that you only know power through threatening other people's power, you have some stuff to unpack that is not for me.
But that's the same with men. I mean, that's patriarchy too. That's racism and patriarchy, because if men are like, oh, well, you as a, like, oh, women, like, I saw this meme that showed, it was like for Fulton County, in Georgia. So, it showed like all Black women. It was like some part of the, I'm trying to remember, like, was it judges or something? It was like, oh, all the such and such, whatever the role was, it was either judges or attorneys or something. They're like, they're now all, for Fulton County, they're now all Black women. And so I'm like, oh, this is lit. Like, look at this, And then some guy reposted it like, oh, they're taking over, blah, 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 whatever. I'm just like, are you kidding? So you feel like, oh, we need to step it up. And so first of all, your only motivation to get your shit together is so that you can kind of like outstage or outdo a Black woman. Okay, that's telling. Right. And for you to feel like your automatic response to it is, ooh, they're taking over, ooh, this, or so you feel like your privilege is threatened. That's what that boils down to. Mm-hmm. So it's like, instead of being uplifting and supportive, you're like, oh, well, they're taking over. No, like, we're doing what we always do. Black women are doing what they always do, being the most educated segment of the population and grinding and doing those things. But that's a threat. So that's just very telling to me. That,
it's so strange.
With race and with sex.
Oh my God, it's so strange. I was recently, I was dating a Nigerian man, and I really liked him, and I enjoyed him, and he was cute, and we had fun together. And then Kanye West got on Twitter and was like, slavery is a choice. Y'all ain't know.
Oh my God.
Black Americans, y'all ain't know that slavery was a choice. And I was like, I'm sorry, excuse me, what?
Right.
What did you say? So we, of course, had our first and last argument because literally the libido left my entire, flew out of my body. Talk about the Black boy with the dreads who just throw up the deuces and disappear. That was the libido.
Yeah. You need the Viola Davis.
Yes, my purse, and I am getting out of here with my good wig because that was a mess. Right. But it was strange because he really felt that way. That was actually what he thought and what he felt. And when I took the little tiny bit of time to listen to what he had to say and why, his reasonings, I had come to the realization that the stereotypes of Black women that are now global, thanks to the internet and television and electricity, honestly. People see me. He saw me as this character, and I was meant to entertain him, and I had no idea that that's what I was doing. And I asked him, I said, what are you taught in school about American chattel slavery? And he was like, I mean, not really. Well, I mean, we learned about it, but we don't really talk about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was just made aware of my own American privilege of how I really truly think people be out here learning about what the hell happened. So, a few million people just disappeared and taken some other place and brutalized. People aren't actually learning about these things. And they're not living that experience as innately and every fucking day the way that I am. And that's why people, men, women, white, Black, because I get the most shit from Black men. I mean, white women are obnoxious, but I get the most shit from Black men. I can't get any less shit from them. They're the worst. I mean, I love them.
Oh, it's pretty
so frustrating.
It's pretty bad. I mean, it is because it's like, but my thing is we put in the most. Okay, let me tell you about this because this is like shows both parallels, and I know my wife will probably be cracking up I don't know if she can overhear me, but this is an experience we had, and I'm like, it really just highlights both, like the issue with white women and with Black men, or white people and Black men. So we were at a Black Lives Matter like rally type of situation. It started out as a meeting and then it ended up becoming like a march and a rally. So first of all,
yes, that sounds amazing.
so first of all, like, of course, Black people were centered in the space. And even when we were kind of like lining up, we were lining up to go into the meeting. And basically we had too many people to fit into the space, but they were like, okay, well, we're trying to prioritize. So pretty much like, white folks, y'all are not the priority. So y'all need to go to the back. Like we need to get Black folks in. We need to get Black folks in, to the space, but we couldn't, fit into the space. So we, went on. So we had my wife and I had these, let's say, altercations in the midst of this. So there's this woman there. Well, no, first of all, we're marching. So we have like, the Brown Berets, which is a like a Latino group. They do like a lot of social justice work for people who don't know. I actually did stuff with them in Atlanta, so that's how I knew who they were. But they literally wear brown berets, so you will like notice them. And it's not a game. Like they are a good example of like what ally is, what solidarity is, because they don't play. They show up and they're like, we're here to hold it down. We're not here to like take over your space. So they were kind of like basically working security during this and kind of like serving as a human barrier between us and the cops. So they're like, we got y'all, we holding it down. So everything's cool. We get to this point where we stop and it's this intersection. That's actually not far from where I live now in Inglewood. And it was where there was like a man and a woman. They were like sleep in their car, just like parked sleep in their car, and the police killed them. So we're like just there, like holding space or whatever. And then we have some people who are like mourning, of course, because we have someone there who it was like that was her cousin, and it was just a lot. So people were mourning and grieving. So we're all kind of like in a circle, or kind of all in the intersection, and I just hear the Brown Berets start like kind of chanting a little bit. And they're like, not your space. I just hear them saying, not your space. Because at first I didn't know what they were saying. They're like, not your space, not your space. And so we're like, what's going on? We look, and this is a group of white folks. They are trying to like break through, make a beeline into the middle of the group. We have like a crowd. They're trying to make a beeline into the middle of the crowd. And they have megaphones. And they're like passing out literature. And I'm talking about just coming in trying to take over. And so when I heard the Brown Berets get louder, they're just like, they were like shutting it down. So what they did was like form us, like they like surrounded the woman who was trying to walk to the middle, but she had a megaphone and she's going in, and they surround her and they like physically move her. Like they move their bodies so that she's like, it's stuck in the middle. So she has to kind of go in the same direction, and they move around her and like move her out of the center of the crowd off to the side. Right. So they do that. And then they're like, so then it's like a younger white girl, cause this was like a little bit older white woman or whatever. And then a younger white woman was like, why are you all so threatened by something? She was like, this isn't about race. No. Okay. She didn't say that yet. She was like, why are you all so threatened by us being here and all this other kind of stuff? And we're like, you're trying to come in and take over space. So my wife was like, ready to lay hands. She's just like, no, what you not going to do? So we managed to get her, kind of like out, because she was, at this point, she's like in the girl's face. And I'm like, okay, so let's try to rein this in. So me and her cousin, we like get her back. So then there's a girl, there's a Black woman there who's like, she's mourning. Like she's like, that was her cousin. So I just hear, because we're walking away, and I just hear kind of in my, I don't know if peripheral hearing is a thing, but it was kind of like in the background. I like everything just sounded like all mixed together, but this one thing just came through where she's like, it's not about race and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? So I turn around and I'm just like, I don't know, from 0 to 100 real quick, because something like snapped. And I'm just like, how dare you? So you're telling someone who's grieving, who's mourning, like, it's not about race, when her cousin was like killed in cold blood, like in these streets. Like, are you kidding me? So I just like went off. And I'm just like, I just can't with you. Like, I want you to say something else to her, because you gonna get it. Like, I'm gonna, like, you gonna catch me saying, don't talk to her. You don't have the right. Like, and so my thing was, I was like, you all are so ridiculous that you have the audacity to even colonize and appropriate our grief. You appropriate our grief. You appropriate our, like, even the struggle. You don't, I was like, but that's not your struggle. I was like, you come talk to me when it's your folks laying out here in the street bleeding out. Like, that's when you come talk to us. But that's not happening. So I don't want to hear it. Like, you know, but how dare you? Like, it would be you that can even try to appropriate grief. It's ridiculous.
There is an audacity to whiteness that really, really gets under my skin. It's one of the things I can't get past. There's such an audacity about them. It's not even just like white people, because it's not even white people. It's folks who aspire to that ideological whiteness. Because there's also an audacity to Black men that really gets under my skin.
But you know what? The same night, I had that situation. So it was like, so that happened. And then we were kind of standing out there. Then this Black guy comes up to us and he's like, oh, it's so nice to see like Black women out here kind of like rallying for Black men and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, see, this one you got.
God.
This you got the whole thing fucked up. I was like, first of all, are you kidding me? I was like, we're always the ones on the front lines. And I was like, honestly, it's always Black queer women who are at the front lines, you know, rallying for your cishet behinds who don't even appreciate it and who don't do the same for us. So I was like, that was ridiculous of you to come to me and say, oh, it's so good. So I was like, no, actually, we've been out here. Where the fuck have you been? And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you are sorry.
That's the
get out my face.
You ain't seen nobody because you wasn't here. You wasn't here. So I
was like, we've been here. Where have you been? I was like, where have you been? And where are you when we need you? And because y'all ain't the only ones dying. So I was like, we've been here. We've been out here in these streets. Like, this is what the fuck we do. Are you kidding me? Like, so he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing with Black men. Like, they assume to them, and it's that's how insidious racism is. So for them, power is becoming oppressive, and they become oppressive to us, much like how Sith. Yes, much like some.
But they want proximity to privilege. You know, they don't want to be kind of like us all to be elevated together. They're like, no, what I want is my male privilege. You know what I'm saying? I want to be as close to the white privilege as possible. I don't have the whiteness, but I do have the maleness. So I'm holding on tight to that. I'm not willing to let it go for your benefit, Black woman, even though you do every goddamn thing for me. You raise me, you take care of you. You know what I'm saying? You're rallying for me. You're uplifting me. A lot of times, literally taking care of grown ass men. You fucking me. It probably ain't even good, but you still give me some. Like, doing every damn thing, but you're not willing to compromise, to sacrifice your privilege for Black women who do every goddamn thing for you. Like, that's ridiculous.
Emotional labor is what it is.
Exactly. And to me, it's not even sacrificing a privilege. Like, you have what you have because of it.
Right.
If anything, this is my due. Like this is,
right?
I'm owed this.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
Owed this.
Right?
I have taken on the emotional brunt. Exactly. Like, pay your debt. Like, you aren't losing anything. I'm cashing in. Is it? Like, you aren't losing anything.
But we need reparations for white people and we need reparations for Black men.
Child, need reparations from a little bit of everybody, because the fact of the matter is that's just one of the first steps towards so many other better, more fun things. The most disappointing thing about these women at work and about that really fine Nigerian man was that we couldn't, because you don't know how to resolve conflict. You're not doing that emotional labor that's going to get you to a place where you can say, oh shit, not only was I wrong, I was ignorant and I was loud. I am sorry.
Right.
Let's figure out like how the hell we're going to move forward. Because to be honest, I don't even know what that looks like. When I resolve conflict, it's like Brianna, You Needed Me, dropping bombs, like just driving down the street, just thugging and bugging. I don't know how to resolve conflict with people and still be able to have this healthy, good, wonderful thing. And I want to know how to do that. And it's difficult because people are not willing to do the labor because they don't see it to be necessary. Emotionality is not
that's
an
what the
important
issue is.
Thing. People don't see emotions as an important part of existing, as an important part of being a human being. And people don't. It's weird because being a black woman, people see me as hyper emotional. It's like I'm super visible, but not visible at all. Because people see all of my emotions, but they don't see why the hell I'm so emotional. And so they take me out to be emotional.
So why are you so angry? Why are you so angry
mad?
Black woman thing?
Not even. And lately, it's been, why are you so sad? What do you have to be sad about? What do you have to be upset about? I'm like, bitch, who are you talking to?
Right.
Do you understand the history of me? Do you understand the history of you even asking me that question? Like, it's so huge. And the weight of that hugeness is like why microaggressions it's why you pop off at the white lady at the Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
I'm fucking done with this shit.
Though. I literally, like, I felt almost like when people say, oh, I blacked out or something, I honestly don't know how I got from walking away with my wife to, like, in her face. Like,
right.
I mean, it was just like a split second. I'm just like in her face, like ready. I'm like, if you breathe too hard, you don't even understand. I'm just so like, so done. I was just like a level of done that I had never been before. But the thing you said about resolving conflict is like, how are you going to resolve conflict with somebody who does not acknowledge your humanity? Like,
exactly.
That is such a huge question, and I have no idea what the answer is, but I know.
Well, they gotta get themselves together though, because that's not fair. That's the thing,
really
though.
It's an unfair thing on you.
Yeah.
Child, get into that self-work. I'm tired of the self-care rhetoric of paint your nails and spend a spa day. It's actually getting into the emotional bruntness of your life, but really,
it's not pretty. It's not the pretty stuff.
It's not cute. It's not cute. At all. Like, when do you have the energy or the time or the resources and the space? You know what I mean? It's so weird and awful. It's like
that should not be
the
your
system really enforces itself and makes sure to stay the way that it is, making sure you don't have time to get into yourself or the energy to get into yourself or into your community or none of that shit.
But that's why you have to live radically. Yeah, exactly. Like you have to live radical. Like you have to treat every decision in your life as a radical decision, from how you love, from the boundaries you set within your love, from how you express that love to how you allow people to interact with you. Like, we have to do it at such a small level. And white people say, well, that's not going to change anything. It's like, but it does. It has to change my interaction. It has to change my space because I have to look you in the face and be able to not hurt you, even though all I know from you is hurt. Right. We don't get there. We don't get there by me pretending like it doesn't exist. Like we have to be very radical. That's why microaggressions we have to talk about them because it's all of that stuff. All of that stuff impacts our makeup. And
we really have to when we think about like living radically and like kind of the things we have to do, for one, it's not our responsibility to do the work for other people. Even though we have been told and, that's how we are treated, like we're supposed to do all the things. It's not my responsibility to get what it is. What we're taught to do is like not to really charge people to get themselves together or to hold themselves accountable. We're taught we just gear ourselves up more to take the hits. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, so that's not our responsibility. We should not have to do that. And two, this whole thing about living radically, we have to be mindful too about like access and language and like not alienating people who are we're radical by our very existence. For in a society that does not want us to live, let alone thrive.
Very true.
This thing is radical. So we can't what that looks like has to be very nuanced. And for some people, it's really just surviving. For some people, what that looks like is surviving. So our people who don't have the same access, who don't have the same education, they are no less radical than those of us who know what microaggressions are. There's plenty of people out here who don't even know what the hell that is. They experience it every day. They don't know that academic term because that is some academia. But they're radical by their existence. And we have to, kind of like make space for them too. And also kind of like have them weigh in, because if you're struggling to find housing and you're struggling to get a job and all kinds of stuff, you know what it is. You know what that is. So it's like we have to hold space for them too. And for them, being radical very well might just be, I'm making it to another day. I did something that brought me joy today. I did something that, what I'm saying? I got to have a what I call bright spots. It's just like, I got to do something that made me happy. Those kind of things are radical because we're in a society we're in a world that like does not want that for us at all. So taking
absolutely
is, really the most radical thing we can do.
Existing, like making it to another day as a person who is not white. Yeah, as someone who is not white, making it to another day is radical in itself. Because there is a plan. there is a plan where society has been set up for us to not coexist within that society and thrive in that society. So making it to the next day is radical in itself. And I feel like we should give ourselves permission to be angry about things. We should give ourselves permission to look at that person and be like, I don't have the time to do that for you. You need to grow the fuck up. I can't do the emotional work for you.
Reclaiming my time.
we have to be okay with being so many white girls like, oh, I couldn't do that. That would be so selfish. My husband would think I was so selfish if I did that. And I'm like, well, it's a good thing I'm doing it then, and you don't have to worry about it.
Right. And selfish should be like a dirty word. That's the thing too. Like selfish, especially in regards to Black women and Black queer folks and all that kind of stuff. Like selfish, we need to kind of reframe how we look at selfishness, because that's used as kind of like this thing against us, like, oh, you're a bad person. But it's like, damn, we need some kind of self-preservation. We need to be able to do some things to kind of like pour into ourselves instead of giving all of our very existence to the world, you know, to the struggle, or to, you know, doing all this radical work or whatever. So it's okay. Like, it's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to make yourself your number one, you know. That's not a bad thing, even though we're taught that, like, you're supposed to put everybody before yourself. We're the caretakers, you know what I'm saying? So you're supposed to put everybody before yourself. But
the mammy trope.
Right, exactly. But it's like, no, we need to be able to put ourselves first and not feel guilty for that, not feel like we're less than, not feel like we're not, because too, especially with like capitalism and all kind of stuff, we're supposed to work. So we have that compounded because we're supposed to work emotionally, work in terms of like career and stuff and on every level. But we have to kind of give ourselves permission to rest, and not just like a spa day. No, like rest emotionally, rest mentally, disengage. Like I made up my mind that I'm not your damn teacher. I'm not doing it. Like I have a little more space. I have more space for like, you know, Black folks or whatever. But in terms of, I ain't teaching Becky and Connor about racism. That's right.
And see, the problem is the microaggression institution was a fabulous facility that was doing the work of teaching, and Big Mouth, whoever that was just like, no, that's not even real. Microaggressions aren't real. Right. You all are tripping. And it's like, okay, so when we do what you ask, we just create a scientific facility in which you can study this thing, this social science, this thing that is happening to us that we can't see, but we can see, and we see every day, and we feel every day. You just don't critique, you don't even care. You don't even.
Right.
So what is the point? What is the point of me doing any teaching? Exactly. Inadvertent racism.
Yeah. For one, it's not. That can't exist. That doesn't exist. It is
direct racism, which is also known as racism. Just saying.
Right.
But that makes it. That's my thing. The thing that really stuck out to me is like that is saying, oh, well, this is unconscious. This wasn't intentional. So it shouldn't be called an aggression. But my thing is, it is an aggression because it is a part of the larger systemic oppression. So it is a microaggression as opposed to an inadvertent thing, because racism is not inadvertent. And so any kind of misconceptions or whatever biases, prejudices that you have about me, whether my Blackness or my queerness, it's because this shit has been ingrained, and it's because that's what's seen as socially acceptable. So if you're looking at me and you're like, oh, well, you're Black, so you're lazy. You're Black, so this, that, and the third. You're queer, so you're not normal. You're an abomination. That's not the natural way. You shouldn't have kids.
Deviant.
You're deviant, and all those things, and that's your thought process. Then your engagement with me is pretty much most of your engagement with me is going to be a microaggression, because you have all this baggage and all this stuff that's ingrained that you're coming with. And that is not inadvertent. It was not a mistake for you to have that shit ingrained in you. That's why I really reject.
On purpose.
Right. That's why I reject that whole idea of it being, oh, well, we should change the term. No, we shouldn't, because it is still an act of aggression, whether it's passive or assertive. It's still aggression, because like everything was set up for you to be this way towards me. That wasn't an accident. Yes. So I'm not about to be like, oh, well, they didn't know any better. Yes, the fuck they did. Or ignorance is not an excuse. So they didn't know any better. Why don't they know any better? Because society has ingrained this in them so that this is what they know. So it's like, oh, well, they said, can I touch your hair? They didn't know any better. Why? Because I'm looked at like a damn animal that you can pet, like I'm at a zoo. That's why. So that's a problem. It's progressive. I don't care if you don't know every little thing behind it. That's not my problem. It's still a microaggression because it's still an act against me that is perpetuating. It's just like one of the manifestations of oppression. So that's going to be, I'm not going to accept. I really, really reject this idea that, oh, that is inadvertent. It's not. Just because they're ignorant doesn't make it inadvertent.
Right. Just because you don't know what you're doing is harmful or hurtful doesn't make it any less harmful or hurtful. One of the most harmful, hurtful conversations I've had where microaggression occurred was with my father, who was going through his second divorce to his mistress and wanted me to care about that. And I absolutely didn't care. And he was very upset that I didn't care and wanted to know why this new woman he was talking to didn't want to talk to him, or why she'll tell me she likes me, but then she'll, act really weird. And I'm like, she doesn't owe you a goddamn thing. The fact that she even gave you your number, like, you should be happy. And he's like, well, why doesn't she owe me anything? And I'm like, what? Wait, what do you mean? Why doesn't she owe you anything? She's her own person. He's like, well, I didn't realize that. And while what he said was not, like you said, it wasn't aggressive and it wasn't loud and it wasn't super racist as racism can be, that misogyny hit me in the fucking gut. That really hit me. And I didn't understand how he didn't understand that what he said was not okay. Like, the conversation is difficult. Yes, but it's not okay what you said. The way you're feeling and thinking is not okay. That's not how you treat other human people. Why don't you understand that? That's my issue, is what is it that's happening to you and in your life that is making you... Yes, where is that disconnect happening? Because even in the ways and the things that my father has said some fucked up shit to me, and he completely had no idea why it was a problem. And I'm like, yikes.
But according to this guy, that would be inadvertent sexism or whatever, when it's like, in reality, patriarchy is patriarchy, so it's not inadvertent. He thinks it's okay because patriarchy and because male privilege. So that's why to him it's, he's like 9+, and for you, you're like, what the fuck? That's why.
If it was inadvertent, it wouldn't have worked. You wouldn't have ever said that to me. We all wouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. It is direct. It is insidious. It is generational. It is intentional. It is completely intentional.
Right. And that is an act of, it is a microaggression. Like, it is something so that's why that really just trips me out when people say, oh, it's like, insults or blah. Yeah, it's all those things, but it's like, there's no way that there's no way that can be inadvertent the way that the way society in general is set up. Like, anti-Blackness is global. So there's no way that racism can be inadvertent when anti-Blackness is global. It's in the very fibers of every culture. Is not just limited to United States of America, but up around the world, there is, no matter what people you look at, whether it's Asian people, Latino people, whatever, their dark-skinned people are looked at differently than their lighter-skinned people. So their Black people are looked at differently. So anti-Blackness is global. So you can't tell me that this, the way that people engage with them is an inadvertent thing. It's like, oh, well, that's all they know, or, oh, it's ignorance. But why is that all they know? Because this is what they've been taught, and this is what's been ingrained for generations and generations. So that is systemic, and that is like a well laid out plan. Honestly, that's a well laid out plan. So
racism,
nothing inadvertent about that. Nothing inadvertent. And it's the same with queerness. When people, when guys make comments like, oh, you just need a man, or,
oh my God.
There's nothing inadvertent. That's not inadvertent. Inadvertent homophobia. No, this is patriarchy at work. This is sexism. This is a man telling me, oh, your identity is not valid. You need to be validated by engaging with a man. Or if you're with a man, oh, you're not, oh, you ain't queer. No, motherfucker, this person can be with a man, still be queer. I can be queer and not man,
and my own shit, not this
right. So, but everything revolves around men. Everything revolves around men in a patriarchy. So they're like, oh well. Even when people say who's the man in a relationship,
or if you're dating a girl, that used to piss me off. be having sex with a girl. Oh, you fuck like a guy. No, I fuck like me.
Or even like, how do y'all have sex? How do y'all have sex? You know how many times, y'all, in my history of being with women, I wish I had a nickel for every time I was asked, how do y'all have sex? Like, logistically. First of all, you wildly appropriate, because that ain't none of your fucking business. And ain't nobody walking up to straight folks being, hey, how do you have sex? Because they're assuming, because you can be straight and still not be having sex the way they're thinking about it. But that's none of your business. And for you to be like, oh, well, because you're not with a man, how could you possibly have sex? That's what you're asserting, is that how could y'all actually even have sex? You're both,
like, how are you having sex at all without a penis?
Which is so interesting to me.
What are you saying? What are you asking me? How are we doing it? We're doing it for longer than you and very well. So
it's like
incredibly transphobic. Like, you have why are you asking questions about people's bodies and what people are doing with their bodies with each other? You're not in this conversation at all. It's business, and it's not a teachable moment at all. It's rude.
Have you, like with trans people, they'll say, oh, have you had such and such surgery? That ain't none of your goddamn business. I'll just be like, listen, for my trans
flat people,
I'm ready to throw hands for you, because that's ridiculous. Ain't none of your damn business, and someone does not have to have surgery to be trans, and that it's just none of your business. Like, you don't walk up to people who you read as not being trans, because you could be wrong, but you don't walk up to people who you assume are not trans and be like, yeah, so what you got going on down there? What? How fucking ridiculous?
I got a whole bunch of mind your damn business.
Right. So it's like, how you don't do that to people. So it's like, if you know that you're not walking up to people and you don't do this indiscriminately to everybody, then it's a problem. Like, that's none of your business what somebody's anatomy is. It's none of your business what someone's doing in their bedroom or wherever they choose to get it in. It's just, that ain't got nothing to do with you. But people, there's this entitlement, like, oh, I should know. Like, I never understood how people can be so entitled to other people's business. Mm-hmm. How does it impact you? This ain't got shit to do with you.
I always find it funny that they always ask how you have sex, but like they never talk about orgasms, because it's like there are women, like two women can have orgasms, but no one's like, I don't go up to straight men and be like, well, you're fucking all these girls and they're not coming, so like what's wrong with your penis? Like, what's going on?
What are you doing? What's going on in your life?
How do you have sex? Not thoroughly, because take the references, they ain't good.
Ain't nobody feeling you. Nobody will give you a call back. None at all.
Oh my gosh. Like, you wondering why you having all these one night stands.
And even worse, to me, people are not asking actual important questions. Sure, you want to know about my sex life because you think I'm just this, oversexed black woman, but you're not even asking, like, well, when y'all fight, how do y'all, like, not fight?
Hello.
Right.
Well, when y'all be broke as hell, how y'all figure out money and shit? These are things that I would love to ask random people, because you never know.
Reduce it to sex. That's what it boils down. They're like, they reduce it to sex. They reduce it to anatomy. They're just like, oh, how do you do this? I'm like, we have whole ass relationships. You know what I'm saying? So,
right. A whole entire person. A whole person. Right. Not a body part. Not a brain.
It's still like business. Like, I could, me and this person could strictly just be having sex. But what the fuck they got to do with you? We ain't having sex with you. So
right. I wasn't just a vagina walking around and then your penis showed up and I'm like, oh wow, now I'm whole. I'm complete now.
This is what I've always been missing.
Thing.
Like, it's ridiculous. So it's just, but those things are all microaggressions. Like, just the fact that, like, the fact that people feel comfortable, like, it surprises me. It amazes me what people feel comfortable asking me. And I started this whole, like on my social media, a lot of times I'll put, oh, like, your friendly neighborhood lesbian or your favorite lesbian, because of the shit that people say to me. And I just be like, my mind is blown. Like, that's why I started asking myself. I was like, I must just be the neighborhood lesbian, because people ask me all kinds of stuff. And I'm just, the audacity, like the boldness and how comfortable people are asking me certain things, is so interesting to me. It is still a microaggression, because it is very, that says a lot about kind of like the state of our society that you feel comfortable enough walking up to me and asking me how me and my wife have sex. Yeah. That says a lot. Like the fact that you feel comfortable and that you feel entitled to that information and that I'm unreasonable for not giving it to you like that. Yeah, that's definitely a microaggression because you wouldn't do that to somebody who you perceive as straight. Like you wouldn't even fathom just walking up to a stranger because it's strangers. You wouldn't fathom walking up to a stranger, this man and a woman, and being like, how do you have sex? So it is a microaggression because you're targeting me. And that's why I'm like, it's not inadvertent because in these interactions we have with people, we are being targeted. There's nothing inadvertent about that.
No. But again, it doesn't matter. Like that's really ultimately like that study was just that was a nice scientific way of saying it does not impact me, so I cannot care enough to consider it something that's aggressive. That's really
well.
And if for nothing, it was a fabulous critique on child science itself and how completely flat. I call it flat, like flat white paint, just flat, no dimension, no nothing.
Dang,
that's why folks are begging for humanities majors to become STEM majors because they're producing doctors with no empathy, no compassion, no integrity, no human characteristics. Oh no, that's a problem suddenly.
Let's just call these people primers. You just call them
primers. Child.
First of all, it's like y'all around here, y'all some primer. And then the other thing is, so when I went to grad school, I I went to grad school for like human services counseling. And I had to do, of course, like a kind of like dissertation type of thing or a thesis, I should say. And I focused on mental health outcomes for Black women. Black women over everything, all day, every day. So I focused on that. But it was talking about, the outcomes, and what it boils down to is something that like Alexa just mentioned, which is essentially cultural competence or the lack of. And so basically they were asking all these questions about why don't Black folks go to therapy? And they're like, there's this deep-seated mistrust. Absolutely. When we have been experimented on, when we have been used like fucking, absolutely, there is a deep mistrust of the medical industry. And then when we go into these medical arenas, and we don't see anybody that looks like us, and you're assuming all my issues are because I'm fat or because you're going to assume, look, I got high blood pressure or whatever. Those microaggressions and all those biases and all those kind of things. No wonder we have, of course, absolutely. If I walk in, yes, I have a deep-seated mistrust. I don't feel like you can serve me. I don't feel like you can heal me. So yes, no, because what do we have in common? And what are you showing me that shows me that you even that you even see my humanity? And so when I was doing this research, I'm like, well, of course we're not taking our ass to therapy. Like, of course we're not going to the doctor when we're sick. Of course we're getting to a point where we're further along in some kind of illness before we're seeking out care, because we got to get our mind right to even go to the damn doctor, go to therapy. But then hopefully they're going to see us as human and not throw some pills at us and send us on our damn way. I mean, of course that's the case. And so and it really boils down to what Alexa mentioned, which is basically there's that lack of cultural competence or whatever. It's like, you don't understand me, so why the fuck would I come to you?
Which is the case generally in education in this country. We are not even in a country that has democratic education in order to prepare citizens to participate in democratic society, because we don't live in that. I don't know what that is. I don't know what this is, but it's definitely not democracy. So we're not actually informing anyone. I mean, the horrors that I'm reading about what's happening in textbooks in Texas and how the Native Americans very nicely gave their land to the Europeans and the slaves helped build America. Bitch.
Child.
Right.
I'm ready to throw hands.
I think any of that shit happened. That is the most ahistorical shit you can ever hear.
They say you saw when they said, slaves came over. Like, not like
like it was a part, like it was a kickback
right.
rock, y'all.
They came over to help. They came over to help you guys. We needed to get this land together. We had this cotton and stuff, and they just came over to give us a hand. Are
Just a
you
little here,
Yeah.
just a little light work, a few
Are you
centuries.
serious?
So when you're
Yo,
producing
the
citizens
rage
that
of
are
the
not
ancestors,
actually
like,
aware of like what's happening or what has happened even, you produce scholarship that's just flat and critique that's just, well, I don't like the words on this page, so I'm going to redefine the words instead of the substance of what's being said.
Right.
The saddest part.
Look at who's defining it, and that's the thing too. It's like we have to define shit for ourselves. Because when I saw that mess about, oh well, the Native Americans, blah blah, or Africans came over to help. I was just like, yeah. First of all, like definitely the rage of the ancestors, like came through. I was like, listen,
you don't get to tell that story for us.
But we have to tell our own, like we have to tell our own story. I mean, this is literally why I wanted to do BRQ, because we have to tell our own stories, and we cannot we've had white men and white folks telling our stories for so long, and so they tell their versions, which are highly skewed at best. So we have to be the authors, of our own stories, because we're actually living them, and they can't do that for us. And so that's like really the main reason why, like for Black Radical Queer Podcast, I'm like, our stories on our own terms, because it's ours to tell. You can't tell, like, this person who has never had my experience can't tell my story. Like we have commonalities to where we all have different life experiences, but the reality is I'm going to trust Alexa. I'm going to trust Shira to tell my story more so than I'm going to trust Becky. Becky can't tell my story. It just is what it is. So
Becky
we have
can't
to
even tell her own story.
Right.
She's still trying to figure out her own damn story.
Right, exactly.
Which is fair.
So focus on yourself.
Fair,
but it's like you can't tell mom. But they're narrating. But it's like they narrate, and I'm like, we have to be the authors and the narrators, and all kinds of stuff has to be our stories, our voices, because we are the authority, and that's what has to shift. Is like white people are looked at as the authority in everything. It's even people, and I mean, we perpetuate it too, where sometimes a Black person may go to, let's say they go to the doctor. Let's say they have one doctor tell them one thing, and then they like want to get a second opinion, and they like trust the white doctor or something, like, oh, because they have to have more expertise or they're whatever. It's all that unconscious stuff that's ingrained. We have to shift our mindset away from that, where we're like, no, we're the authorities. I'm not trusting what these other folks say outside of what my people say, because my people know my experience. We have to be the authorities on that. We're the only ones who can be, which is the whole point of like doing something like this, where I'm like, okay, here's this person who's supposed to be a kind of like excelled in his field. He's a researcher. He's a scientist. He's a quote unquote debunker, and he's supposed to be an expert is what it boils down to. And he's supposed to be an expert, and he's critiquing this idea of microaggressions, when the reality is you can critique it, but you don't get to be an authority on my lived experience. You don't get to be an authority on what we've gone through. So that's why I really wanted to have this conversation, because I'm like, we're the authority. We're the ones who can say we can really break it down and say, okay, you can say that this is inadvertent. You can say that this is unintentional, blah, 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 but this is not your life. You're not living this life. So you don't actually know what it's like. You're looking at like we all know the political is personal. So you can look at it from a strictly scientific perspective and be like, oh, well, or even look at it from a linguistic perspective and be like, oh, well, microaggression means this. So that means, okay, that's fine. That's all well and fine.
Pretentious white person voice.
Right. Like, you can say that, but the reality is that's not going to trump our lived experiences. So you can be an authority, but you can, be a quote unquote expert in your field and be fucking wrong, or it's not given the full context. And so that's what really stuck out to me when I saw this article, was that it didn't give the full context. It's just like, oh, this is wrong and this is why. And I'm like, okay, but it's easy for me to say that from the outside looking in. You don't go through these experiences, so you don't get to quote unquote debunk it. You can say that scientifically and whatever and get all your accolades, but that's not real life. So I wanted to have y'all come on and have this conversation with me. I'm glad that you did. I got my cue on time. So,
yes, you are on time.
Before I wrap up, I actually want to let you guys. So I think you both have, I think you're both in the BRQ discussion group. And if you're not, I'll make sure that you are, because what we're going to do in there is we'll be able to continue the conversations, have other people weigh in. If you're okay with people connecting with you on social media, then I'll give you a chance to kind of let people know what your handles are so they can connect with you, because I want for us to be able to have these conversations. Not just that, but I want us to be able to tell our own shit, tell our own stories, and engage with each other about them, because no one knows better than we know. No professor at Emory knows better than we know. So do y'all want to share how you can be like connected with on social media?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. For my Instagram, that's just Miss Common Ready, but that's MXS Common Ready, and my Twitter is Miss Shira Com, and again the Miss is MXS, not MRS. There's no men here, so. And that's and then on Facebook you can just look me up.
I love this. I love how Charmaine came through in the chat like ha ha ha. Producer comments. Okay, Alexa, what's your social media?
So I'm on the Twitter. It's yellowfeather_, and I mostly just be retweeting what other people say. To be honest, y'all, I am still collecting language for things. I lived a very gaslit life, so I'm still collecting language. So if you are a writer, an artist, or just an awesome person, I'd love to follow you and chat with you and learn the things just from hanging and being in the great tradition of Black feminism as we do.
Nice. I'm glad that you all came on and had this conversation with me. So thank you both. Thank you, Alexa. Thank you, Shira. I'm sure it's something that will continue, and we'll definitely like down the line have to kind of reconvene and have another conversation, because it's, we're going to keep on doing this. But in terms of Black Radical Queer, I'm on all the social media. So definitely make sure that you follow, do whatever you need to do so that you can stay up to date on the podcast. So on all social media, I am Black Rad Queer. So it's BLK RAD QWR at Black Rad Queer everywhere. So that's Facebook. If you just look Black Radical Queer Podcast, I will pop up. If you look on Twitter, Black Rad Queer, BLK RAD QWR. Same on Instagram. Just all across the board, all social media. So that way you can send questions or bring up topics that you want to be discussed. You can engage in the conversation. You can tweet me, and you can follow me on Twitter, because Twitter is where I say I'm reckless.
Honestly,
I'm going to talk about
tweet whole things.
Yeah, so it's like Twitter is real spicy. It's real spicy. But yeah, it's, you can connect with me on there, on Facebook too. And then we have the Black Radical Queer Podcast discussion group, which is connected to the BRQ Facebook page. So if you like the page, it has a community tab, and it'll, guide you to the group. And that's where we will all convene to discuss what we talked about on the podcast. And so we'll be able to talk about all that. So thank you guys for being a part of this with me. And
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for letting us talk.
So
we'll have to talk shit for an hour or something.
I know. So we'll have to do it again. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. Black Radical Queer is a ManeHustle Media podcast hosted by Jhavia Nicole and produced and edited by Charmaine Johnson. Music is by Young Carts. You can find us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Black Rad Queer. That's BLK RAD QWR. And you can also listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to stay connected to us in our discussion group. It's called the BRQ discussion group on Facebook, where we will continue the conversations that we start in the podcast.
ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.